We are going to start our press conference where we are going to talk today about the situation with attacks on the civil activists in Ukraine. We are going to present the situation for the first half year of the current year. We are going to talk what forms of persecution and pressure the civil activists are going through, in which region lead the way in this very negative respect. We are going to share the statistical data and talk about the legislative climate for the civil society existence and the bills or the draft laws which have been submitted for consideration of the Parliament of Ukraine and which are in the way of the work of the civil and organizations and the attacks per se in the process of their investigation, which cases were brought to the court. And today is very symbolic, is a tragic day because exactly 2 years back, an attack was committed on the civil activist Katya Gandziuk, and we are going to talk today as well what we have 2 years later with this case. Can we say that there was an efficient investigation carried out what is required and demanded by the relatives and the friends of Katerina? But to start with, I would like to introduce to you the participants of our today's press conference. I'm going to start perhaps with the farthest side. We have Rozhkova, Deputy Director of the Human Rights Center, for my colleague from the ZMINA research, Anastasia Moskvichova, and also we have Ihor Savluk. He is an activist and blogger from the Kyiv region. He is one of our, and we are going actually to talk about one of the incidents which have been documented by us, and he is going to talk about the attack on him. Also, we have Maryna Khromykh, a participant of the initiative, who contracted the mother Katya Gandziuk, and I represented the ZMINA organization. We monitor all the cases associated with the attacks on public activists. We are going to join later by Vitaliy Tytych. He is a lawyer of Serhiy Sternenko, and we'll talk about that specific case as well. To start with, I would like to turn the mic to my colleague Anastasia Moskvichova for her to briefly present or talk about the main trends in the first half of this year regarding the situation with the public activists, civil activists. And good afternoon. Actually, during the first half year, we registered 48 incidents of persecution of the public activists in the government-controlled territory of Ukraine. And let's say you have the more details here. 11 are the physical aggression against activists. And as of today, we know only about 2 cases when those cases actually were submitted to the court, were brought to the court, and the investigation is over, and now it's it's up to the court to pass their decision. There were 7 intimidations. 6 cases have the illegal persecution signs, and 3 illegal detention or search. 4 more, the obstacles for the peaceful assemblies, 3 as discreditation, and 2 blocking the operation of the public organizations, the work of the public organizations. Based on our observation, the most risky activities among those different kinds of activities which we managed to classify based on our methodology, we are talking about anti-corruption activity, 9 cases of persecution, defense of the rights of the LGBT people, 5 cases, and the environmental protection, 4 cases. Speaking about the territorial division, I don't know whether you can see perfectly the picture. 23 in the city of Kyiv, and then the second place goes to Odessa region, and the third is shared by the Kyiv region and Donetsk region. Also, there are one case in each of the Transcarpathian, Chernivtsi, Rivne, and Zaporizhia and Vinnytsia regions. One in each of those. In some of the Kyiv cases, about which we actually informed you based on the results of the first quarter monitoring, actually that but the problem has not been resolved, wasn't resolved, and as a result, those cases are kind of extended or extended in time, as we would say, put it this way. And actually, they still continue to throw the Maxim Butkevich Communication Without Borders organization. We fixed some of the cases like that, and you can send the screen. The publication on the Telegram channel Voliere, his photos. In the mentioned channel transformed its work. They start to publish less openly the data of the activists, who later can become the, let's say, the targets for the attacks. But they announced that we're going to do that in the closed chat. And actually, they really discuss those details in such chats. You can see that in the description of the incidents section. Several cases of attacks on the feminists and the people of the non-traditional orientation took place in Podol district of Kyiv. Another very important case, let's say, which continues not only in the second quarter of this year, but at the beginning of the third quarter, media campaign of discreditation of the head of the anti-corruption movement, Vitaliy Shabunin, and Dmitro Sherembey, who is another activist. We're talking about a special episode when they published, they gave the telephone number of Shabunin and absolutely ungrounded accusations against him, and there was a kind of they put the fire to the house where his family resides, and now they publish some of the information which allegedly are the investigation of the origin of his assets. So this media campaign goes in parallel with parallel attacks on the activists, as well as the legal and the judicial, let's say, accusations against them. In the first quarter, there was a case against MP Derkach. Perhaps you remember that. Speaking about different regions, 2 of 3 cases which we documented in the Donetsk region, they fall on the second quarter of this year. In particular, they put on fire the car of Serhiy Fisun. He is representative of the movement, the Future of Bakhmut community, including the activists of different public organizations or civil organizations. They actually set up this movement in order to resolve different local problems of the city. This case happened on June 2nd, and then there were some people who suffered, who actually entered the building, and then he received a call that his car was aflame. That was just in the heat of the day. Serhiy Fisun informed us that he received some threats. He was threatened before his car was set on fire. He called the police. We approached the police, and they told us that there was no call from Serhiy Fisun. In other words, they did not register such complaints. Another case which happened in Odessa region, I would like to emphasize this specific case because this is a high profile. We are talking about Valentina Buchok from Ivano-Pila, Ukrainian activist. She was a hostage in the Donetsk, so-called Donetsk People Republic groupings. On June 20, she actually triggered the tripwire installed in her yard of her house. What is important in this case? This is actually the second case when in her premises somebody set this kind of explosive device. And the first case, the husband of Valentina was dead. He's a military guy. He actually, let's say, managed to defuse this explosive device, and the police, they did not qualify it as a kind of attempted murder or attempted assault or attack, but as a kind of the voluntary turning in of some of the improvised device, explosive device. And this testified to the fact that the unpunished evil in grows, and we need to perfectly investigate into such cases. One of the trends, which perhaps we are going to talk in more details later, what actually influenced the civil society. When we are talking about the coronavirus epidemic and the quarantine we are living through, still there are 5 cases among those which we registered. They were related to this quarantine. In 3 cases, the police actually filled out the protocols for some of the violations committed allegedly by activists. They were actually justified in the court, and because of the violation of the quarantine rules, So one of those is present here, Ihor Savluk, blogger from Tytych, from Kyiv region. He actually uses YouTube channel, and he cooperates also with the Bila Tserkva channel as well, to say nothing about the local publications. Mostly he focuses his attention on the anti-corruption activities, monitoring the local elections, and he also wrote about the use of the local budget funds. Of late, a very graphical topic which he was trying to investigate, bringing the garbage and let's say the waste from the Lviv region, from the city of Lviv to Tytych. In April, he became the eyewitness how the mayor of Tytych and some other high official violated the quarantine rules and regulations, after which there was an attack on him. And later he will tell a small detail about what happened. So immediately I will turn the mic to Ihor Savluk to tell him about the attack on his house and what about the investigation of this specific case. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Ihor Savluk. I'm an activist, I'm a public activist from the town of Tytych. I started my public activities back still yet at the Maidan. I'm not going to tell you anything about Maidan, but Maidan once over, I came back to my home, and I decided to go to the municipality, and together with my like-minded deputies. I was not an MP, I was not a deputy, I was just a sitting deputy. We tried to reveal some of the violations on the part of the head of the municipality, let's say unjustified or ungrounded, let's say spending of the available funds. That person was absolutely mad about me. He forbade me to take pictures during the session. He said that you have not been accredited, you have to do that. Why you need to have some accreditation to take pictures in the town hall? I tried to explain them that I act in compliance with this respective article of the Constitution of Ukraine. Somewhere in July last year, I started to receive some notification from the citizens of our citizens from Tytych that they started to bring the waste and garbage from the city of Lviv to our dumping site. They actually observed huge heaps of waste. We do not have any places to accommodate such heaps of waste. We have some kind of garden area there, whatever. And people started to inform me about that. I went there to check whether it's true or not. When I was there, I actually saw 2 huge mountains of garbage or waste, and started to try to find out what was the origin of those wastes. I found some of the shop let's say, tickets and checks and some other documents, which I actually filmed using my video camera without any accusation, of our, let's say, town, our mayor. I just informed you that there is the waste in our city from the city of Lviv. And as you remember, there was a case when big trucks were carrying that waste from the city of Lviv to different cities of Ukraine. And I asked that the person, that official, just to take some measures, maybe to set up some kind of investigation committee just to check with the origin of that waste. They brought that waste during the night hours. Nobody did that during the, let's say, the day, in daylight. In my then he actually responded or reacted very bitterly, and he actually accused me, called me a provocateur, and that he said that I wanted to discredit the, let's say, the head of the municipality, that I just somebody pays me for that I'm kind of the agent or something like that. So he tried to make a kind of provocateur out of me. Okay, we started to take turns, just being present at that dumping site with some people. But after that incident that took place in summer last year, they stopped to bring that garbage to our dumping site. So we never revealed any big heaps of that waste. Maybe because they were bringing that during the night hours, and they use some kind of tractor of unknown belongings, so to say. So the dumping site actually belongs to the executive committee of the city, but the let's say the head of the city did not respond to that in any way, to that whose tractor that was. So actually, that tractor they used in order to blend or to mix that kind of waste, imported waste, with the local waste, so to say, from the city of Kyiv. Well, then it somehow calmed down. I mean, this situation, and then after New Year 2020, after all the New Year festivities and holidays, I started again to receive some information that they renewed this kind of importation or bringing the Lviv waste to our dumping site. I went there to verify whether it was true or not. Again, and together with the police, because they called both myself and the police. And so happened that we met with the policeman in the dark hours of the day at the dumping site, and they told us that there was a big truck coming there, but we didn't find any truck of this kind. But we found a close relative of the head of the municipality at the dumping site, and his brother as well. When we asked them, well, actually, I didn't recognize him immediately, but those guys who accompanied me there was a deputy from the municipal council and some public activists from our city. And actually, they told me this is actually the brother-in-law of the mayor. I was more concentrated on the West and the police, what they were doing in the middle of the night. And actually, when he quickly tried to leave the site, and I started to catch up with him, and said, "Volodya, you're the brother-in-law, let's say, of the mayor. What are you doing here?" And he said, "I brought the waste, you know, just during the night hours." Then I edited that video footage. I have a special page on YouTube, which is entitled Stepan Bandera, and in the Tytych Pravda, Tytych Truth newspaper, we have kind of the Facebook page. And the city mayor once again said that I was a provocator, that I already have some bodyguards, and the local deputies actually played the role of bodyguards for me, etc., and paid to me. And again, he emphasized several times that they paid me in order to discredit the mayor of the city. Sometime later, again, together with the police, And so happened again that the local citizens, you know, those people who pass by the bumping site, and when they see something suspicious, they call myself and the police. But first of all, they call me because it takes me less time to arrive there than the police. So they actually detained that truck was full of the Lviv waste, and the waybill was actually issued with the address of city of Tytych, Gomenyuk Street. And I have to tell you that this dumping site is outside the boundaries of the city, and so it cannot actually be linked to any of the streets of the city. But this Viktor Gomenyuk Street is the closest to the dumping site. So the police actually, they took those documents, this waybill, and I actually photographed that waybill. Then we called the local deputies, and assistants of the people's deputy came there. Some people started to arrive. We called the mayor of the city. They did not take the receiver. Sometimes, then he eventually did that. He said that he was too busy to come there. Never did he come to that site. Always claiming that he was too busy. Victor, can you tell us about the April case? What happened with your house? Well, I'm approaching that. We are limited in time, unfortunately. Well, briefly, we actually stopped that truck. The police actually detained that, and it stayed. It was not arrested, but detained, for 5 or 6 days. And the judge didn't see any kind of corpus delicti in this case. And this actual judge is the friend of the wife of the, let's say, the manager of this dumping site. So they dismissed that truck, etc. It left. We have the evidence that this is the Lviv city waste. We have all the documents, but the mayor of the city repeats his accusations and calling us the provocators, etc., etc. After this incident, they stopped to bring in this kind of waste from other city, but the citizens of our town, they said that they won't be able to do anything because this is controlled by our local prosecutor, from our local prosecutor's office, and all those cases will be stopped or put on the shelf. Nothing will happen. So one day I witnessed. Well, actually, this happened on April 24, about 7:30 p.m. I became a witness. Well, actually, it was the heat of the coronavirus pandemic, and everybody said just stay home and always wear the special protection mask. And he actually demonstrated how he himself wears this special mask. They closed all the stores, all the cafeterias and cafes, and they try to take control whether everybody sticks to observes the rules. Once I actually was going pass by the military, let's say, recruitment office. There was the Bureau of the Technological Inspection. And, well, actually, anybody can enter that territory. They never lock the gate. And all of a sudden, I saw the car belonging to the mayor of the city. And since he always tries to avoid any meeting with me, and you cannot see him in the municipality, he actually installed some e-locks, not to be disturbed. He never answers the calls, and he actually said that he didn't want to meet us. So I saw his car, and I thought maybe I can just catch him here and talk about that waste. I entered the territory of this military recruitment office, and I heard some voices. outside of the building. I actually, guided by the sounds of those voices, I approached them, the garages actually. And I saw behind one of the garage, there were two benches and the wooden table. And I saw the mayor of the city, his assistant, two prosecutors, and the head of the military recruitment office. And they did not wear any masks. They were not afraid of any coronavirus. And I saw some of the, let's say, some alcoholic drinks and something to eat it up. I couldn't see whether they were drinking or not, but I saw the bottle of liquor anyway. And whenever I talk to the mayor of the city, I always record this on my telephone or whatever, in order to avoid the possibility for him to say that I broke something, whatever. So I switched on my telephone even before I approached that place. And my question I put, well, not actually a question, I actually greeted them and said, good afternoon, what are you doing drinking to the coronavirus? So the mayor immediately jumped up to approach me. The prosecutor tried to hide behind the back of the mayor, not to be filmed. Anyway, I managed to take pictures of him as well. So the mayor started to approach me, and I understood that he wanted to take away the telephone, to snatch away actually from my hand. And I started to retreat, and there was a very limited territory, let's say, with the garage and some kind of a special booth, whatever. He followed me. When he turned back, I followed him already again to the territory of this office, but there were no prosecutors any longer. And I saw them that they started to flee. By the mayor started to run after me, and I fled. I must confess. He tried to catch up with me for some time, and I understood that perhaps there was some kind of the to put it mildly, heated discussion, not to say the fight with him. So I jumped into my car and went home. My wife was at home, and I told her just immediately, put into your bag some money which we still have with the main documents. Let's flee from here. Well, I did not count that the mayor himself can come to my house, but I saw, maybe the mayor or the prosecutors will send some of the gangsters to attack me. So we went in my car to a neighboring village. Well, we spent the night there in that village. Next day in the morning, I come back. I did not. I was not very much concerned. And we have kind of the cul-de-sac in our street, and we saw that dead end, and where we live. And we approached the house. Seemingly everything was okay with that, but when I approached the yard of the house, and my wife told me that, okay, the house is intact. I mean the house, the building, the brickwork, but the windows are shredded, broken. On the ground floor, you cannot actually reach it with your hand. And the second hand I approached, the glass was broken on the level of the human body hand. And then I approached the closer, and I smelled some gasoline. Well, I understood that they actually poured some gasoline inside, but they did not put fire to that. When inside, I saw a plastic bottle, 1.5 liter, with some kind of the yellow color liquid gasoline. Actually, I immediately called the police. They came very quickly. The whole precinct, actually came to my house. and some people from Kyiv went and started the investigation. But if you're talking about the breakage of my windows, this was not the first case. When I filmed some of what they did before your re-election campaign in October. So before the election, they issued the booklet that the mayor actually repaired such and such street. He did such and such things. When I came to that place, and there were so many puddles, you can actually paddle there in the boat, with the oars. And the people informed me in such a way. Actually, I do not accuse himself, but anyway, I didn't know whether he did it himself, but somebody did that. They broke the windows in my house. And again, I called the police. They actually recorded this happening, this case, and that was the end of the investigation. But in this specific case, the investigation was launched actually because it was a high-profile case. Why? Because there was a kind of the drinking session, so to say, with the participation of the mayor and prosecutors, and they break the windows in my house, and I'm a journalist of the Svoboda Party, Freedom Party, and Liberty Party, and they actually wrote about that in their publication. Then the OSCE actually heard this case, and they have a special. They monitor. They have a special unit who monitor the cases to protect or defend the journalists. So it became a high-profile case, and they started a very loud, resounding investigation. I'm not going to give you more details, but the police. Well, they did their job. I cannot say anything bad about the police. They did not identify the attackers. Until this day, nothing is clear. And then I came to Kyiv in the Department of Strategic Investigations, and because and the deputy director of this office wanted to see me and talk to me. I talked with him, and his subordinates actually carried out the investigation. And owing to the team of this Department of Strategic Investigation, we had some progress in this investigation at last. Then I wrote the application to the office of the General Prosecutor's Office to involve them and the Department of the State Bureau of Investigation. They didn't answer. They said that this is not their case, and then they submitted that the case, redelegated the case to the Regional Prosecutor's Office. Then this case from the police went to the Regional Prosecutor's Office, and they sent it to the State Investigation Agency. And nothing happened after that. Actually, the Regional Prosecutor's Office informed me that they were going to inform me later on, but I did not receive any word from them since that day. About 1.5 months later, the mayor, who kept silence all this time, he started very active. He appeared already on the scene. He wrote a paper, kind of complaint to the police on me, accusing me on Article 182, Part 2, that I was actually interfering with his private life, motivating that, well, he did not mention that it happened during the coronavirus quarantine. He mentioned that together with his friends, he wrote that actually during he took his leisure time to meet with his friends, and so all of a sudden a person came who is similar to Ihor Savluk,
and they made video footage, and they provided it to 1+1 channel. I didn't provide this video to the internet, to my channel. I phoned to 1+1 channel, and journalists from Roshi program came, and they video footage, some materials there. Thank you very much for this detailed description of your case. I believe that those who damaged the windows in your house, we hope that these people will be found and brought to justice. And these cases of persecution of activists, they were described in our two reports based on the results of the two quarters. They are in Ukrainian and in English. You may get these materials after our event. And I would like also to focus your attention at one dangerous trend that we saw during the first quarter of 2020, the introduction of legislative initiatives that are harmful to civil society. They introduced about 9 such draft laws, and if they are adopted, we believe that this will be a big attack on civil liberties in Ukraine. Such draft laws, they equal the activity of civil society organizations to commercial lobbyism. They want to introduce the notion of foreign agents concerning NGOs, and also illustration of those people from NGOs who go to power, and also they ban actions near courts. They introduce verification using lie detectors for activists and many other interesting things. If you see who are the authors who introduced such legislative initiatives, in majority, these are the representatives of two factions. This is a pro-life and for life platform, and also Servant of the People and Batkivshina, and also one of co-authors, Andriy Derkach. He is outside any faction. 3 draft laws also were introduced recently. They were introduced in July. So we have 12 draft laws that were introduced this year, 3 concerning such topic as prohibition of propaganda of homosexualism. I quote, they do not want to use gender term in Ukrainian legislation. Also, there is a law. There are such things as ruining of traditional family, and this may infringe the activities of organizations that deal with the rights of LGBT community. And also part of these draft laws, they are not about regulation concerning NGOs, but they concern some other areas. But some points of these draft laws are done in such a way that they concern the work of some activists or public civil society organizations. They introduce financial reporting that is burdensome. They may lose non-profitability status. So this big number of these draft laws, it raises concern, and it is important to focus on these issues, and we should call on people's deputies not to support mentioned draft laws, because this will be a big step back concerning human rights protection and democracy in Ukraine. One more important point we always focus our attention on in our monitoring. These are important resonance cases concerning civil society activists. We briefly provided information about cases Irina Zdrovska from Kyiv Oblast, Katya Gandziuk, Serhiy Sternenko cases, and we have representatives of civil society initiatives, and we have lawyers, and I would like to give the floor to Maryna Khromykh. And 2 years passed after the attack on Katerina Gandziuk, and the initiative made a lot to force law enforcement bodies to work. Can we say that significant progress is reached in the case? Can we end this work? Are you satisfied with the work carried out by law enforcement bodies? Thank you, Tatiana. First of all, I would like to thank Tatiana and her colleagues, because due to such people, due to those who supported this initiative from the start, it would be very difficult for us to work without them. And society on the whole and all of you would forget about it if not for them. Due to our joint efforts, we got a result that we have as of now. I would like to say this right ahead. We are not satisfied with the result. The initiative was created in order to, in the end task was to punish those people who ordered this attack on Katerina. She was alive after attack for 3 months. And also, we wanted to punish not only those who ordered, but also those who sabotaged the investigation, those who covered those who were involved in this crime. As of today, the group was punished, the group of those who executed this crime. They are behind bars. Starting June last year, they have different sentences, some minor fines that they should pay. But nevertheless, this is an achievement. And this achievement is the result of our work, is the result of our pressure on the Ukrainian power, previous power, and present power, and also pressure on law enforcement bodies, because they we had to force them in order that they do their work for which they're paid. Also, in pretrial detention facility, we have 3 people who are involved in the killing of Katerina Gandziuk. Igor Pavlovsky is one of the organizers. He is suspected. Alexei Levin also. He is suspected and organizing this crime, and law enforcement found him in Bulgaria. He was hiding for a long time. He was returned to Ukraine. And also Vladislav Manger. He is one of suspected people who ordered this crime. These are not all people who are involved in this case. And also the initiative and the relatives of Katerina, and also 2 other names. Andriy Gordeyev, former head of Oblast State Administration, was mentioned by these people, and Mr. Grishuk, his former deputy. About these 2 people, nothing is done, unfortunately, but at the same time, we should continue this pressure, and we should demand law enforcement bodies and the power to punish all those who ordered this crime, first of all, and of course those who are involved in this terrible crime. In this case of Katerina Gandziuk, we may mention many reasons why we have this big pessimism, this judiciary system and this law enforcement bodies. We have big pessimism when we see them. But as my colleague, I would like to have some optimism, and I would like to say that we've reached a lot. Because about 5 years ago, if someone of you would think that former assistant of the deputy will be behind bars, son of renowned, notorious official and acting head of Oblast Council, we wouldn't believe in this. We would say that in Ukraine everything is covered up and it is impossible to do something about it. Once again, due to our joint actions, writing the letters, and we are trying to speak with the president, with the law enforcement officials, and we try to deal with these issues concerning many crimes against civil society activists. And due to this work that was done, all these people are in a pretrial detention facility. And it is hard to call these persons people. And we really hope that these persons will not have at least political future. Mr. Shuk last summer was trying to behind the People's Deputy, and he was nominated in the district where there is Leshevsky region, and there is illegal falling of the trees, and Katya Gandziuk mentioned this many times. She covered up the criminal schemes in which Mr. Shuk and Andrei Kyiv and Alexander Manger this is the Kherson criminal group. They all were involved in this case. And I would like to say, when we are speaking about Katerina Gandziuk case, and I would like to announce the action that we will hold today in the evening at the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and our initiative and the relatives of Katerina. We remember that the representatives of police in the days after attack on Katerina, they did nothing. All actions that should have been done by law enforcement officers, they were made by friends, volunteers, and acquaintances of Katerina, all those who wanted to find those attackers at once. And also they wanted to find those who ordered this crime. Police didn't interview the witnesses, they didn't make photo robot of the attackers, they didn't analyze the substance, the liquid with which Katerina was splashed. And Vodokanal, they had good relations with Katerina, and they tested this substance. And Katerina was in hospital, and this case was at National Police, and when Katerina died, this case was provided to SBU and police. They just sent empty files to SBU, so they lost these this period of time when they should have collected the evidence against attackers. Police did nothing, and they did everything in order that organizers and attackers went unpunished to cover them up and to destroy all the evidence. That's why we will hold this action near the building of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and we would like to mention those who are personally responsible for these delays, that police and the ministry did nothing, and top officials in the structure of the ministry, instead of expressing their concerns and demanding anything to write some adequate materials, they wrote some nonsense, and they asked some excuses from activists, and activists, they hope now that all those who were involved in this case, that they will be punished. We will remind about these people, because we understand that these names, they should not be forgotten, and these names should remain in some landfill of Ukrainian history, because these people, they do not have any right to be on those positions they are on, and to provide law enforcement system that now kills. As of now, they continue to kill these activists. At the end, what I would like to say is that the case of Katya Gandziuk is the lost exam for both presidents, for Petro Poroshenko and for Vladimir Zelensky, because they both promised to the relatives of Katerina and to Ukrainian society that they do everything possible in order that those who are guilty would be punished. But we see that what is going on during the years of independence of Ukraine, that many people who now do some crimes, they are covered by top officials, and the system does not change. And during these years, there was no proper reform, and the system continues to work against the citizens and the activists who are trying to change the system, who are trying to make some changes in Ukraine in order to have better future for us and for our children. That's why we hope that we should try to change the situation. We should turn on this political will and bring those who are guilty to justice. But as of now, we recognize that, as I've said, this is a lost exam, failed exam for both presidents. Thank you, Maria. I would like to say that this action will be held at 7 p.m. near the ministry. We invite all the journalists to come to tell about Katerina and how her case is proceeding. And we should commemorate the memory of Katerina, and we should demand justice in this case in order to bring these people who ordered this case to responsibility. All those representatives of law enforcement bodies who for 2 years were involved in sabotaging the investigation of killing of Katerina Gandziuk. And here, I would like to speak about another case that is really a resonance. This is Serhiy Sternenko case. Our organization follows this case starting the beginning when in 2018 there were 3 attacks on him. In first incident, no one found these attackers, and second, he detained the attacker himself. And due to this person was identified and got a charge. And in the third attack, he killed one of the 2 attackers, Ivan Kuznetsov, and because of this, he is now charged in the murder case, and this case raised a big social resonance. And this was in May, June, and today we have a lawyer, Vitaliy Tytych, and I would like to give a floor to him in order that he provided the details of the case.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I already shared my assessment, when I got acquainted with the criminal investigation documents. I can actually compile those. Those criminal proceedings, which were mentioned by my colleague, there are actually 3 of those. To be more correct, based on 3 different episodes of attacks on Sternenko. They are very indicative, all of them. They're just ideal in laboratory-based, indicative to illustrate the situation with our law enforcement agencies. Sorry to say that, but we are talking about the organized group of criminals who actually commit the severe crimes, and they are, to call them, the law enforcement officers, it's, against our conscience. But I'm a lawyer, have to use the words they use. So there are a lot of transmissions, and everything is open. And those actions are so indicative. They even are unique for Ukraine, The criminal proceedings based on the fact of the attacks, well, there is no investigation in place. As Tatiana correctly mentioned, whatever was acquired during these criminal proceedings, all the evidence in the attacker himself, who is accused of that, they said that everything was prepared by hands of the victim. This is a unique situation. Those evidence not only testified to the fact that, and somebody, when we were talking about the Katya Gandziuk, that they start to cover somebody. No, those evidence say that at least the Odessa police, especially high officials in police, not only they coordinated or tried to cover something, they organized those attacks. And we can assume, based on the evidence we have, that maybe they were actually those who actually ordered or contracted this case. That's why, once again, I repeat myself, this is a unique case and unique response of the top officials, including the prosecutor general, incumbent, and the previous one. So this response is nothing. There is no response or reaction from President Zelensky. Same holds for this case of the so-called case of Sternenko. To me, as a lawyer, for me as a lawyer, this is a unique case, and this uniqueness, I repeat again myself, we take a special professional interest in that, and we are talking about the European human protection courts. And you know that there is, simply put in simple words, we took with the trying to avoid the human rights violation, and only there are 3 cases which were established by the European Court. So the Sternenko case is now at the stage, has all those obvious evidences, not just assumptions, but evidences. We actually interrogated the former head who actually testified in the court about this case, actually. They understand the European Convention, our legislation, the criminal proceedings based on the fact versus Sternenko. There is no case like that. There is only political persecution, whatever is mentioned or found within these criminal proceedings and brought to the court. In the practice of European Court, it has nothing, it's not significant at all, because this was done based on the circumstances, and all those under a certain specific pressure, when even the prosecutors rejected to do something about that, and only when we had some kind of inside information, they actually, the lengthy search in the prosecutor's office enabled us to find a person who is now in the court. They again and again they try to violate the criminal proceedings or procedure. I can talk a lot about that, so maybe should you have any questions, can give you some details. But the key thing is there is no criminal proceedings against Sternenko altogether. This is a key fact. And another key fact, this is not Sternenko's case. And this is very important thing important case for Ukraine, generally speaking. We are talking about the right of a citizen of Ukraine to a required or necessary defense, which is provided for by criminal code as not punishable actions, but under conditions of dysfunction law enforcement agencies, we have to take care of our own defense ourselves, and those bad guys who are called the law enforcement officers, they do nothing about that. And this is a kind of exemplary case, the case of Sternenko, for all the people in Ukraine. The criminal factor doesn't matter. We are talking about what matters is the social component. So please follow this case, because it directly is related to each citizens of this country, their relatives, near and dear in their life. Thank you, Vitaliy. I would like to And that if you take the Sternenko case as on the example of other activists, we eyewitness the complex nature of persecution when there are repeated physical attacks. When there is one attack which is not investigated, the person does not stop their public activities, then another and another, still another attacks take place. As Igor mentioned, there were several attacks on his house. Very often, all this is accompanied by some kind of, let's say, forged, fabricated cases. There were several cases opened in Odessa that he allegedly organized some kind of the disturbances, public disturbances, etc., etc. And it all is accompanied by discreditation campaign, very well organized, using the mass media, which are well known for their systemic not compliance with the legislation, and using the different networks like the Telegram channels. The same holds for Vitaliy Shabunin case. He had several attacks when he was actually, they poured some of the brilliant green on his, etc. They opened a number of the criminal cases. They opened them, they closed those cases, but all this takes time. This actually takes the working hours of the people, psychologically very detrimental to the person, and they carry out a lot of discreditation campaigns. They publish financial information, numbers of their mobile or cellular phones, and they actually persecute them, and the goal is just to eliminate the trust towards such public activists, just to show, look, they are corruptionists. They are kind of on the payroll of somebody else. They are Sorosiatas, whatever else. And after there is no trust, it's very easy to attack this person when nobody is going to try to defend this person. Unfortunately, such patterns are very similar to each other. We were talking a lot about the role of the law enforcement agencies, law enforcement system, and this situation in one organization, which is one of the expert organizations, our long-standing partners who monitor the police activities. In particular, they follow the activities of the police and their illegal activities during the quarantine, COVID-19 quarantine. They try to document all the cases, helping us to do that. So I'd like to give the floor to Rozhkova. We have a very much present time. Thank you. From the beginning of the quarantine, we started to monitor the activities of the law enforcement bodies. We issued 2 reports regarding the typical violation of human rights by the police or the law enforcement bodies during the measures introduced for the COVID-19 epidemic, and one regarding the detention of the public when they actually apply this Article 144 prim. Our conclusions briefly. Ukraine did not introduce de jure. It did introduce the extraordinary situation in this country, but they introduced some of the limitation restrictions, and actually they gradually introduced that situation. If we're talking about the emergency situation, they did not provide for the limitation of the constitutional freedoms and rights, but in fact they did that. According to the Constitution, they cannot do that. According to the Constitution, Article 139, this can be done only based on the ruling of the court. But we've registered some of the measures of this kind when the cabinet ministers actually strengthened those. March 1920, they actually introduced this kind of limitation up to 200 people all over the territory of Ukraine, and they introduced also some additional limitations up to 60 persons, and only after thermal screening was in place. Who was going to ensure that? It was not clear. The second wave, after on March 17, they introduced more strict let's say, prohibitions or bans for the, let's say, the number of people who can gather together. In the last wave, the strictest limitations or restrictions, they banned the movement of more than two persons together. We can actually talk about three different scenarios for the peaceful assemblies during quarantine. The first is without any attempt to bring to the responsibility the participants of those assemblies. The second, when the assemblies were actually stopped after administrative protocols were filled out. And the third one, when they opened the proceedings against the participants, either in the administrative or criminal proceedings. One of the cases which we documented together with the ZMINA, it was the Sprinkling Granite as a negative example of the activities of law enforcement bodies. In mid March, near the building of the president's show demonstration, they took this, organized this meeting, sprinkling on the granite. On April 6th, during the night when the strictest restrictions were introduced, the participants in this action were visited by the law enforcement officers, and they have actually opened the cases, or just they filled out the protocols. According to one of the participants of those events, those policemen visited them after midnight and told them that they were violating the anti-quarantine regulations according to the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, and they started to fill out the protocols against all the participants whom they found near the presidential buildings. And the participants said that they were only in pairs, and actually they observed the requirement to keep the distance of 2 meters between themselves. So this was a kind of amazing response or reaction on the police. Just to give an example, before even investigation of the murder of Katya Gandziuk in April, protests of the entrepreneurs, which took place on the 3rd of April near the office of the president or near the cabinet ministers. Before that, they actually could freely actually implement their liberties. That's why it's really very surprising if we are talking about such legal and professional actions on the part of the police in this specific case. This is one of the indicative cases we can talk about. Later, the courts actually canceled those cases. In 2 cases, they mentioned that there was not enough evidence collected by police. In 2 cases, they were not properly documented. In 2 other cases, they declared the participants guilty, but again, there was a kind of administrative proceedings. Speaking about the Katerina Gandziuk, the ruling said that within the framework of the administrative violation, which was the only grounds for bringing the persons to responsibility, the court ruled that there is no corpus delicti in the activities of the participants, and they did not bring that person to responsibility. Some of the recommendations based on our investigations regarding the activities on the part of the police or Verkhovna Rada, the cabinet ministers of Ukraine. We recommended Verkhovna Rada to set up the temporary investigation committee regarding the investigation of the legality of the actions. National police should restrict the peaceful assemblies based only on the judicial ruling or the court ruling. Also to observe the legality and operate only those legal notions which exist and fixed in the legislation. Development and the reduction of the quarantine measures must based on the clear observance of the rights and freedoms of citizens. Actually, we are already exhausted our time. Maybe we still have time for a couple of questions from the audience. Any questions, please introduce yourself and who you address your question to. My question is to Mr. Tytych. Why do you think Serhiy Sternenko became the target of this kind of indicative punishment So just to scare off all the rest, not to do something like that. Why him, he, and nobody else? Because we have a lot of similar cases in Ukraine when they actually persecute the people for their self-defense. Thank you for your question. This is a part of our investigation within the framework of the criminal proceedings. First of all, it's well known, I believe, to those who are here today about his activities per se. He started this activity when he was still very young. In Odessa, he was in the front line of the war against the Russian world. All those cases are well known. Later, and this is a bare fact, this is not our deliberation, but a bare fact, you can see that in his publications where he gives different facts. On this way of revolutionary wave, he may be run counter to the interests of the Mr. Trukhanov, the mafia boss of Odessa, and his compiler, Bogovin. Both of them are the... Golovin is actually the former head of the police, local police. And after that, they started this classical persecution of these persons, Sternenko. Later on, owing to this indicativeness, I would say, of this case, I mentioned that it was a indicative case. Maybe he was selected from the cohort of the activists, as you aptly mentioned, that just to demonstrate who is the boss. Here, there could be different options. I do not want to stick to conspirology, but it's truly why this case of Sternenko, applying those cynical activities, which are actually provocative or provocations, they provoke the society. We have to follow that with much attention, and there are also those components. I don't want to talk about in details about that they just take from the ceiling, I would say, and kind of try to show that there's something different. Seventh channel Odessa. In the context of the attacks, you mentioned the Odessa region places second this year in the first 6 months of this year. So what stories could you voice here, or maybe describe situation, present situation in Odessa? Maybe this question should be addressed to you, Nastya. Before that, I would like to say that Odessa traditionally leads the way year in, year out, if you're talking about the number of the attacks. Maybe Nastya can say a few words more about the latest attacks. Well, actually, we are talking about the Odessa region, not about the city of Odessa. If you're talking about the physical attacks, more details you can see in our report. I can mention here two of those. One of them is the case which has been submitted to the court, the case which happened in January 6 in Podilsk. They attacked the local blogger and activist Alexander Yaroshenko. He was actually beaten seriously, and I talked with him in March, more than 2 months after the attack took place. I could easily see the scars on his head, so it was a very serious physical attack. Now they qualify this case as theft. Well, I cannot understand this kind of qualification, judicial qualification. Maybe the lawyers can say more about that. Quite recently, there was an attack in Odessa. The Common Goal, Spilna Meta organization head, Mr. Savchenko, was attacked. And as far as I understand, they already identified the attacker. So maybe in this case we can actually pay credit to the law enforcement officers for their rather quick actions taken to identify this attacker. Also, we have some cases of intimidation or the threats addressed to the activists in Odessa. Through using the social networks. In one case, we determined that the real person actually threatened And in the second case, there's something of bot threat. In both cases, this activist actually called the police and they tried to send this application. First, they tried to reject those applications, but he said that they threatened the police that he was going to send this case to the court. And actually, I call upon the activists to pay attention to that, to draw attention to that. First, they refused to register those complaints, and then some attacks took place. And this is associated with a lengthy persecution of the activists. It should be noted that in May there was another case in Ismail, in Odessa region, when an activist, Alexander Stepanenko, his car was set on fire. This is another blogger who actually writes about the activities of the policemen, the penalties, the fines, some corruption associated actions, and he wrote about that in a very clear words. And they actually burned his car. In September last year, the burnt of his colleague Vladislav Delakov was also burned. In none of the cases, nobody found any perpetrators. So we can say that in Odessa region, this very tense situation still holds, even now. Thank you, Anastasia. More questions? If none, just we can sum up, wrap up our conference. The major problem why all those attacks take place, because there is no punishment. You were talking about investigation of the attacks which already took place. We again, we would like to call upon the law enforcement agencies to investigate into such cases. I would like to thank the European Union, which supports our works, helps us to document the attacks on the defenders, right, human rights defenders and activists, and actually we do that together with the Helsinki Committee, which is financed by the European Union. Thank you.